Evening, everybody. Good evening. Andre Harrison here. You can call me Dre. My friends call me Dre. Thank you so much for watching. You are now tuned in to the Two-Getherness podcast with Rap with Dre, where we talk about topics pertaining to life, marriage, and relationships. Today, we're going to get into a very deep conversation. And for those that aren't in relationships now and they find themselves struggling, this is probably the episode for you to watch. We're going to have a great conversation. And please, we welcome you to join in the conversation. One thing I don't pretend to be is like a love guru. That's not who I am. I don't pretend to be a relationship expert. There's some things that I know. But one thing I do realize is that everybody has something to add to every conversation. We could all learn from one another. And I really would like this to be and yes, I may know some things, but I don't know everything. So what I like to do is have people come on the show. Let's converse about the topic. Let's build on the topic, and let's learn from one another in a guided conversation. So again, everybody, thank you so much for joining in. Tiffany, my co-teacher, thank you for joining in. Shanita, Patty, Marisol on Facebook. We have Patricia here. Again, thank you so much, Keith, for joining in. Bobby, how's it going? Hope everything is well. And let's get into the topic. Before I get into the topic, I do want to just share with you guys that after today, this episode will be available on podcasts through Spotify, Anchor, and a couple of other outlets. So you can search the Two-Getherness podcast. That's together with a TWO dash Two-Getherness podcast. All right. So today I have a special guest on the show. He probably knows more than I do, with a lot more experience in this topic of marriage and relationships. Great guy. We had a chance to meet in Los Angeles a couple of years ago at a fatherhood conference. And I've been following him on Facebook. He's just a great overall guy. I'm going to let him introduce himself after I say his name. He'll tell you a little bit about himself, and then we're going to get into the conversation. So Keith, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I really appreciate, Andre, the invitation. We've kind of followed each other for the last few years. I think mainly on Facebook. And if you're looking for an expert tonight, you invited the wrong person. But I do have some life experience. Let's just put it that way. That I think that you learn things along the way, and I hope to be able to add to the conversation. As you know. Just recently, my wife and I we've been praying about having a private practice. And so we're getting ready to start that here in February. So we're very excited about that. I still work full time for our county in mental health, and we'll continue to do so. But we are excited about, go ahead.
Well, tell them a little bit about the practice.
Well, the practice is really designed to meet a particular need that I think is it's not completely lacking in our area, but it is a practice that will be founded upon a Christian worldview. And I think that is something that in our area there's not a whole lot to be offered to folks, and so we're excited to offer that.
Well, I will say this: I think people of faith also look at mental health as a bad thing. Like most people, when they and I got to say, I don't know of many churches that even promote their I guess the people in their parish, the parishioners, to attend counseling or anything like that. And that's something that I think everybody would benefit from, even Christians. And,
well, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. And I think that's what we want to try to do as well, is work with local churches to help them to see that, there are some things that, you're not going to just fix by saying God bless you to somebody or, I'm going to pray for you. Not that we don't believe in the power of prayer, but there are some certain things that I think we can glean from counseling and that kind of practice that can help and assist Christians and people in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, I think the part that we'll add here to the conversation is the fact that we have a blended family. My wife and I, between us, we have 8 children. Yeah, that's a lot.
8 children.
Yes, ranging from 33 down to 14. And so we still have two young boys in the home, teenagers. Well, one just did become a teenager. So we have two teenage boys, and it's really been, a joy for me to be a father, and to father these children. And with a blended family, you have many challenges, and I think that's what we have found. But thankfully, with God's help, we've been able to navigate, those waters.
In a couple of weeks, I actually have a topic. Hopefully you can join me on that if you can. The topic will be about blended families and how to find success, or how to navigate through putting together a blended family. So that'll be a great time for us to converse more. I wanted to bring you on to talk to you about, I guess, and this is more of a pre-relationship. There's a lot of people out there that go into relationships, and they don't really find, I guess, what we would call true love, or what society will call true love. And maybe there's a couple of things that probably add to that. And I wanted to just have a conversation with that. Anybody else, if you have any questions, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or here on Get Vocal, we invite you to come on and just have a conversation with us as well. But I wanted to know, what would you say would be the 5 things that we do as people that would get in our way of finding true love?
Well, when we discussed this earlier, I did some thinking about it and reflection on it, and there were 5 things that I was able to come up with, the 5 things that we do that get in the way of true love. And I think I'll just kind of go through these. The first one would be, well,
before we do that, I think your mic just went off. I'm not sure if you may have pressed is there a mic button on the app? I'm not sure if that's
okay. Is that
there
better?
You go. Yep.
Alrighty.
See you now. All right.
Well, I think the first one is just that we're not authentic. I think that any person that's going to go into a relationship needs to realize that unless they're authentic and real, let's say, it's going to create issues. It's going to be a block to being able to establish a relationship and a connection with the other person, because when we're trying to be something we're not, that's simply not going to work.
Well, let me ask you about that, because we live in a time now where the first impression is the only impression. How do we really make a good first impression and make sure that we maintain that the realness? That, because I have this thing where, like, if I was to go out on a date or a first date, I wouldn't pull out all the stops. I'm not taking somebody to the nicest spot. I'm not doing all that, because I think sometimes that perception isn't always a reality. So I think that and this is how I would approach it. I would, go and try to be myself as much as I can, so that I don't deceive the person that, I may be trying to get to know. So how is it that we can be our real self, be our genuine selves, and still make a decent first impression?
Well, again, I just think that we need to get away from what media says we're supposed to be like. I think for men, we tend to follow into these cultural messages that say we have to be tough, we have to have a certain car, we have to be a certain way, we have to act macho, we have to, be flashy, wear certain clothes, and do things like that. And we have to sort of kind of get away from that message that we've heard maybe for obviously all our lives through movies and TV shows and things like that. Put that aside and really just relax and be ourselves with this person. Be who we really are, not try to impress somebody, with flashy thsee, fancy clothes, cars, and all that kind of good stuff. That just many times just sends the wrong message.
Yeah, I would see, like, if I was to go out on a first date today, I'll be pulling up in like a 2001 Ford Escape. I pull up to the house, and then I'll get a text message, "Oh, sorry, I'm sick," as she looks out the window, because she's looking at my car. And, no, I can't deal with him. Not driving that, So, but I think there's a lot of, you're right. I think there's a lot of pressure by society or what they tell us we should be looking like, or what we should be doing, or how we should approach, I guess, first dates or whatever, or dating in general, which cause us to have a warped view of what it means to get into a relationship. Because then what happens is, 5 months down the line, when, you can't keep renting that car or afford to go out to the nice place, the real you come out, and then this person may feel deceived. And yeah. So I think that's a very good point. And actually, I believe that firmly. I've had plenty of conversations about this. I'm not sure what you guys think. Marisol wrote, things change when the representatives leaves and the real you is present. And that's absolutely true. Once you really present your real self, things can change. I always say, let the other person have the opportunity to get to know who you really are, and not what you want them to perceive you to be. Yeah, very good. What's number 2?
Number 2 is if we don't love,
I think we lost your video again.
All right, here I'm back. The second one is that if we don't love and accept ourselves, that's going to be a roadblock. We're talking about self-esteem here. We're talking about how we feel about ourselves. It's going to cause and create huge issues of being able to separate ourselves from the other person. I think when we don't view ourselves in a healthy way, we're in danger of becoming codependent on others. And when I say codependent, we get lost in other people because we're looking for something to meet a need in us, not in a healthy way. Yeah. And so we need to be careful that when we approach relationships, that we have dealt with those views of ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and have we come to terms with who we are, and have we accepted ourselves completely. I think part of that is we do that through our relationship with God. He accepts us 100% how we are. He made us, so he better, right? And so it's being able to tune into that and grasp that, and then that's going to come out, when we're with others, especially if we're seeking some sort of romantic relationship.
Yeah, I think identity is important in knowing who you are, being happy and loving yourself and the way God made you. I think that's great points. And if we can't love ourselves and appreciate ourselves, it's going to be very hard to love somebody else. And then I think it's also unfair to the person that you're in a relationship with if you don't really love yourself, because then you expect them to love you in a way that you don't even love yourself.
Yes.
And it sort of creates a handicap in a relationship, and all that pressure will be on the other person to love you when you don't love yourself. That could be very detrimental to any relationship. Latifah Wright wrote, that should be on the top of the list. Self-love is needed in any relationship. I agree with your 2 points so far. Okay. Thank you, Latifah, for your input. Right. Yeah, very true. Yeah. All right. Number 3. What do you think? What's number 3?
The number 3 would be that we're not patient with the process.
Ooh,
what I mean by this is that we have to be patient as we develop our relationship with the other person. And any true relationship where true love is going to come about is based upon friendship. Friendship. It's getting to know that person, getting to understand who they are, their weaknesses, their strengths, and that sort of thing. So it's being able to be patient with the process.
Yeah. You think we live in a time where we rush to be in a relationship and we rush to claim somebody. Right. You know what? We're not really quick though to rush to marriage anymore. Though we want somebody to call our own quickly, but we don't want to. Do you think that has to do with wanting to claim somebody or not wanting to be alone?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's a mixed bag of both of those. Wanting us to be with somebody, because there's a difference between wanting to be with somebody because you care about them and love them, and also being with them because somehow you need something from them for you to feel good about yourself, which kind of ties into that second one that we just discussed.
Yeah, codependency.
Yeah, the codependency.
Yeah. I think that's a tough one. It's a tough one. Commitment is commitment could be one of those things where we want somebody to be in a relationship with so that they can be committed to us, so that we can claim, we can, feel secure in that claim. But,
Yep.
In some cases, they're okay with that. But when it comes to reciprocating that and being that for the other person, they may not want that. May not want to have that accountability, or to be answerable to somebody else, but they want that in return. So they'll rush into relationships quickly, instead of allowing the process to flow the way it should. Be friends, because a lot of people go into relationships and they barely know each other. And one of the best ways people can get to know one another is lose the expectations and just be friends. Just be friends. And there could be an interest there. There could be an interest there, but really generally try to get to know the other person.
Yeah, I think that's where our society really makes some big mistakes, and that is really just rushing the relationship, and going from having sex on the first date to that kind of clouding everything, basically. It clouds and creates an issue with them really being able to get to know that person.
Yeah, I did hear something today, actually just today, but before I say that, Marcel said, I agree. I always said it's better to be friends first and get to know them, then bring it becoming something more if it's meant to be, or let it become something more if it's meant to be. Shanita wrote, humans are interdependent. We need each other, period. And sex changes expectations. Very true. Sex does change expectations. And when you get to that place where sex is involved, it's no longer at that point trying to get to know the person, because sex does change even that, because it's hard to really get to know somebody, because sex clouds things. It does. People. It does cloud things. Yeah. So so you're saying.
Yeah, this is not on the topic for tonight. But at some point, we need to have a discussion about pornography and how that affects men and women and their expectations about what relationships are. I think those sorts of that habit can truly cloud a person's view of what a real relationship is. It can foreclose them from getting close to people because of this sort of habit. And so, I think that any sort of practice of consuming that sort of thing, pornography can be very detrimental to, being genuine with people and being, like we're talking about, being authentic and loving ourselves and that sort of thing. So.
And also, when you're getting into a relationship, and if we tie that into getting to a relationship, we tend to put that same expectation that we see in whatever video you're watching on the person that you're with, and then you're not going to find, the satisfaction even in that.
No.
Not only are you not getting to know this person, but you're not even being pleased in that area because your expectations are completely wrong. So, very good point. Very good point. Yeah. So let me hit number 4.
All right, just bear with me here.
Yep. Yeah, and Keith, by the way, is a licensed marriage and family counselor in the state of California, right?
Yes, I'm licensed
in the state of California.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Right. And you work as you have a social worker as well.
Basically, that's what it is. Mental health clinician.
Clinician,
primarily case management with severely mentally ill. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So Keith knows what he's talking about. He has extensive. He may not say he has extensive knowledge, but he knows the stuff. He knows the stuff. Hey, Leah, how's it going? How's it going on? How's it going? Yeah.
So the other thing is we're unwilling to make a commitment, and you used that word before, and this is a serious issue nowadays.
Yeah.
Is men, and I can only speak for men because I'm not a woman, but I think women would probably agree that commitment is something that we don't view like maybe our parents viewed commitment. or even our grandparents viewed commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I think about commitment today, and the terms that we think of commitment would be like our cell phone. I'm only committed to this thing for like a year, maybe.
Yeah.
and then I'm getting a new one.
Yeah.
And I think we all fall into that trap. And that's kind of the mentality that starts building into us that, our commitment is short term. It's not long term. And until we're willing to realize that commitment it's a big deal. And, there's a lot of things that we will go through in a relationship, good and bad, that, we need to be prepared for. So that way we don't, just bail from the relationship because, some problems come up. And I understand there could be some circumstances like domestic violence and so forth that, that notwithstanding, the commitment is something that I think we have to really take seriously.
Yeah. Marisol wrote, I don't even think people know what that means anymore. And I think she's right. And I think that goes actually, it's a very good point in the topic. What gets in the way of finding true love? Commitment. I heard, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lauryn Hill. A couple of years ago, she was giving a lecture, and she said something about love and how people love what arouses them, and when they're no longer aroused by it, they no longer love it, and then they leave it. And so people don't find true love because they're not willing to make true commitments. You can't really find true love unless you're willing to make a true commitment to somebody. Shanita wrote, the only commitment that is real to me is marriage or single, plain and simple. This generation gives up on things easily, Latifah wrote. And that's very true. But, part of that is just how society has become catering to everybody. And whatever doesn't make you happy, just move on from it instead of trying to make it work. Now, am I saying people should live miserably in a situation? No. I do believe that every situation could be rectified. But in situations such as, like you were saying, domestic violence, there's certain things that I believe can be done. Do I think that it could be fixed? Absolutely. Do I think that somebody should remain getting beat while it gets fixed? Absolutely not. So, but commitment is one of those things that people will never, is one of those walls that unless you can find and be willing to commit to something, you never will find true love. And it will never happen. It will never happen, because especially if you're looking at it in a selfish way, I'm going to love who loves me back. And as long as they make me feel good, then I'm going to keep loving them. That's not what commitment is all about. And that's not what true love is. Shanita wrote, Latifah wrote, it's like they only like the honeymoon stage. Yeah. So many people like the honeymoon stage in relationships. And Shanita wrote, Lauren spoke about unconditional love. Most humans don't do that. We love as long as the conditions are pleasing to us. And that's true too. Yep. So what do you think about that as far as commitment and conditions in commitments?
Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure where you're going with the conditions. Can you?
So when it comes to conditions, so I'm going to keep loving you and I'll stay committed to you as long as you meet these conditions to make me feel good.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
obviously that's not going to work. And I think that's definitely from personal experience. I know it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't place conditions, on whether you're going to care or love somebody. And so, yeah, I think there's no place for conditions in a relationship where, it's developing and growing. And, if it's true love doesn't put conditions, It doesn't place conditions. It's 100% acceptance. Even, when we fail, we know that person's still there, going to support us and help us. So there's no place. It should be unconditional.
I'm not sure if this is going to be one of your points, but I will ask because I'm sort of thinking about it while we're talking about this. Sometimes being unable to commit to something could be a cause of something that may have happened in somebody's childhood, a childhood trauma that caused them not to trust again or be willing to commit to somebody because they don't want to have to be vulnerable to somebody else. Do you think that is a valid factor in that?
Oh, huge, huge. You know, we don't understand, I think, how much that, childhood trauma has impacted the state of relationships today. The inability to connect with others because of not having a caring, loving parent, a parent who was emotionally connected to you, who checked in with you to comfort you and to love you. When you grow up without that, it is extremely difficult for you to do that in an adult relationship, because you've never experienced it, and you've never probably seen it modeled by your parents. And so, yeah, I think that it's I think it is a huge issue for many people, and I think that anyone that's going through difficulty in their relationship with somebody should step back and sort of think about the impact of their childhood, especially if there was anything there that sort of, they were injured emotionally. And I, obviously I'm a therapist, so I do recommend therapy, going to see a counselor, whether it's a counselor or a professional counselor, at your county. I think it's important to process, the pain from your past in a safe environment in order to kind of move beyond that. Because I think a lot of failed marriages are the result of people who come from a childhood that was filled with just a lot of inattention and just a lot of emotional neglect. So.
Latifah wrote, or they didn't see it in their life growing up. Mommy went from man to man, and daddy was a Rolling Stone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, and that's learned behavior too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Some guys, some boys are reared up to, be just that. Praised for being a player. So it's hard for them to commit when all they've known their whole life is, I can't, give my heart to any one female because. So that's a good point, Latifah. Great point.
Yep, very much so.
Yeah, yeah. And what's your fifth? What's the fifth thing we do to get in our way of finding true love?
Okay. Bear with me.
Yep. We're here. And thank you everybody for watching and for listening. We really, really appreciate it. And if you have any comments, please share. I'll read them. And we have a spot here if you're listening and watching on Get Vocal. You're more than welcome to take a spot and ask a question if you would like. Especially, and we have a lot of women that's commenting, so we appreciate your input also. We really do.
Much so. Yeah. I think the fifth thing is that we're not honest or trustworthy. We're not honest or trustworthy. And so what I mean by that is true love only blossoms within a relationship where two people are honest with each other and they're each trustworthy. If you don't have that, there won't be what we would call true love. It'll just fall apart at some point because of the lack of trust or dishonesty.
How would two people develop that trust and honesty between one another, especially if they've had situations in the past that caused them not to trust and not to be vulnerable anymore, to open up?
Well, I think that adds to the problem. If somebody has never been able to share from the deepest parts of themselves about a struggle they have or a problem, they'll just carry that into their next relationship. And so I think that finding a person, that cares about you, that loves you unconditionally, is a huge part of being able to, build this kind of trust, this
Yeah.
intimacy, as we would say. Um, it's not easy. I think that, I think back of my wife and I and some things that we had to kind of come to terms with and discuss, and it wasn't easy at all. It was very difficult. But as I look back, I can see how our relationship and the safety within our relationship was a catalyst for me to become, I think, who I am today. And I'm
Mm.
very grateful for that. And I think many individuals are need that sort of environment. That's the beauty of a good relationship where two people have found love, let's say true love, and there's a commitment there. Is that's a place for growth. It's
Yeah.
a place for growth. It can be a place of growth beyond what all the media says and the world says. It's a place where God intends for us to grow and become
Mm.
who we were meant to be.
Mm. Yeah, and that that safety allows people to grow. That's very deep.
Uh,
That's very deep. I think, and then grow and actually grow closer together. And I think I feel close to those people in my life that I feel safe around. Like let's not,
Absolutely.
and then if I'm with somebody that that I'm married to and we share everything, intimate moments, and I feel really safe with them, like sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. Um, Latifa wrote great advice. Natalie, how's it going? LEPA. Uh, hey, cousin, I have my family watching from Trinidad. How's it going, Maryland? Um, Latifa wrote, yes, the foundation has to be built, has to be solid and not built on lies. Um, yeah, all this stuff is great, man. I thank you guys. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think people want to be with somebody that they can grow with, live with, and have companionship with. And I think one of the things that you mentioned is vital. And I didn't even think about that when I was thinking about 5 things that we do to get in our way, and that's not being patient. One of the things that Natalie does, which I love, Natalie was my youth when I was a youth pastor. She was one of my teenagers in Rochester, New York, and she's watching on Facebook now. And she's been traveling, speaking and motivating people all over the nation, and doing seminars and webinars. So Natalie, I am so proud of you. You have no clue how proud I am of you. All right, you make this old man proud. Love you. But she has this thing where she motivates young women and women in general about embracing their singleness and not rushing into relationships, because a lot of people will rush into toxic situations, and being patient, trying to identify if the two people are even compatible, being friends, allowing the process to flow gradually and not rushing into it. That's not something that I would even consider talking about in this in this kind of topic. But I'm very glad you did, because people don't think about that.
Yeah.
We don't. No, we want to be with somebody so fast and get into a relationship so fast. And a lot of times that's because it makes us feel good, and we don't consider how I'm going to make the other person feel. This is really
Very
good.
true.
Yeah, really good. A couple more comments. I agree. Safety is where you can be 100% yourself. Natalie wrote, but God, LOL. Thank you. Love you too. You both must have God in your life to build a good foundation of love with trust. That's what Marilyn says. Latifa wrote, when should you let go because there is no growth? Oh, when should you let go because there is no growth, but the love is there? I guess, she's asking a question. Should you let go because there is no growth, but the love is there?
Well, the first thing I would say is, why isn't there any growth? I
Mm.
mean, I think it has to start with us personally. Is there something that we're not doing to contribute to the growth of the relationship? And then I would say that if you can name some things that you're doing to encourage growth, then it's time for a good conversation with your partner and be able to share your heart and be able to say,
Yeah.
what, I want us to grow. I know that you love me and I love you, but I just feel like we're a little bit stagnant here. What is it that we can do? Make it a partnership. What can we do together to kind of get our marriage back to where we would like it to be. So
Yeah.
it's a partnership.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Thank you so much for the compliment. I'm glad you're relating to the topic. Natalie wrote, she has a question. Is love enough?
Is love enough? I know where she's coming from when she says that, and I think that love is, a relationship is more than just what we would call love. And here's the thing. You can define love in several different ways. And obviously in the world, we hear love as this real strong feeling, this feeling of pleasure, so forth. But really, love is action. Love is what we do for other people. It's our sacrifice for others. And so I think we have to get beyond just the feely part of it, although that can be nice. And I think when we are serving our partner, that's when those feelings are created anyway. So, I think that being able to serve your partner, whatever that looks like, that might be putting lotion on your partner's feet at night or something like that, or, helping them with the dishes, or, taking out the trash, or whatever it is. Those are ways that we convey and we prove that we love that person.
And I think love can really be proved outside of the bedroom.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, we again, we no other way to put it. We live in a very sexualized, sexually charged society where one of the only ways we know how to show love is to be sexually intimate with somebody. And I think, which is, and married couples, that's one expression of love, but love is so much more than that that particular action, sacrificial action, things that may put you out of your way, that will make your spouse feel loved and feel that love by your action. This is good stuff. Natalie wrote, "Oh, not the feet," and she wrote, "No, no rings, no ring. You get nada, nothing." And she also wrote that earlier that a lot of churches make singles feel uncomfortable and rush singles to get married. And then Latifah responded with, "That's society in general." And Marisol wrote, "Love, like every other word, when defined, is dependent on who is interpreting it." Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And Natalie asked a question: what if that is the only way a person knows? Are you referring to? And I think if that the only way they know how to express love is through sexual contact, I think that's what she's referring to.
And that's possible. If someone may view that as the only way of expressing love, there's a reason why they call it making love, I suppose. But I think there are more ways to show your love than just through through sex. There's obviously other ways of doing that.
Yeah,
but it's different for everybody. Everyone has their view. It's like, I don't know if you've heard of that book, The Love Languages.
Yeah.
For some it's touch. For some it's being given gifts. Everyone has a certain frequency, let's say, that they're on to receive love, and you have to be aware of that.
Yeah, and like me, for instance, like I'm not one for gifts. I don't even really need words of affirmation. I'm like a proximity person, a time person. Like if you just sit next to me, even if we don't say anything, I feel loved just by you next to me. And I've always been that way. So I think understanding how we love and how a person receives love, and then learning how to give that love is actually really a very good expression of what love is.
Yeah. Well, no, I found recently, maybe I've kind of known it, but mine is touch. I want to be hugged. I want my arm to be caressed. That type of action makes me feel loved by my partner. And I think that, it's just an aspect of me. It may be different for someone else, but that's what I guess you would call my love language.
Yeah. Joseph wrote, but I think you're talking about sexuality based on intimacy and not knowing any other alternative way to love. In my can in my profession raise flags on possible generational sin and ties that bind therein? Okay, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but I think the in relationship to the conversation we're having, not necessarily sexuality, but the act of sex in general as it pertains to loving your spouse or loving the person you're with as the only way of showing love and finding alternative ways to show love. Oh, okay. God, he said he got you. All right. Sorry, Joseph. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody have any other questions? I love you too, Marilyn. I think the right Marisol wrote, I think the right person can and will show them that there is more than one way to express that love. Yeah. Oh, Joseph is a care counselor at his local church. And he said, so I see all sorts of men struggling in so many areas in this topic. Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of men struggle with visual and with sexually charged creatures. And there's no other way to even say it. We are. And a lot of men struggle in this area. And Joseph, if you're more than welcome to join the conversation if you like. We have about 12 more minutes before we shut the show down. And if you would like to join the conversation, you're more than welcome to. Quality time is important. Quality and time is important for love and happiness. Very true. I'm trying to make sure I get all the comments so that I make sure people feel like they're part of the conversation. Let me see. So Natalie wrote, I just need time, quality time above anything else. I'm trying, but epic failure. I'm like, well, marry me. Thank you for your expertise and advice. Thanking you for your expertise and advice. Latifa, thank you. Yeah. I think Natalie was referring to people rushing into relationships. Yeah. So if you have any like closing advice or remarks that you can say to people that are listening right now, in regards to this and what they can do to make sure that they find, I guess, true love, what would you tell them?
Well, I would just tell them that, take your time. I think we're in danger anytime we rush into any project or relationship, and so I think just we will be wise to slow ourselves down and to be authentic, like we talked about. That was our first point. Be authentic with others. Resist the urge to try to be somebody that we're not. And be comfortable in our own skin. And that ties into the second point, which was, we need to make sure that we have dealt with certain things from our past in order to be able to love ourselves the way that we should. If we don't love ourselves, I can promise you won't be able to love anyone else. Period. It's just not going to happen. You might show it, but it'll never be genuine. And so it's important to work through past trauma, issues from the past, in order to not, replay those later. And then I think it's just learning to be honest with people, being a trustworthy person. This is not always easy, but it's always the best road to take. Trying to resist the urge to, again, follow the lead of the mass media about relationships. We see relationships portrayed in unusual ways, like on The Bachelorette and The Bachelor, all these programs, and it's just not really real. It's not genuine. And so, be yourself. Pray and ask God to help you with some of these areas that you need to grow in, so you can be a healthy person and not get into a relationship to try to fix yourself. Put that burden on someone else. Just be open and patient, and be willing to take risks, with
Mm-hmm.
relationships. I think it's very, very important. And sometimes if we've been hurt before, we are very reluctant to take risks. But unless
Mm-hmm.
we do that, we won't. No risk, no reward, they say. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's important for us to, with God's help, be able to step out and start building good, healthy relationships. So that's what just comes to my mind.
Yeah, and if it's okay, can I add something?
Sure.
Don't be afraid to end a relationship that's not moving in the right direction. And this is, prior to marriage. I think one of the best things people should be looking for in regards to forming a relationship that will lead to marriage is identifying if you two are compatible. And if you guys aren't compatible, don't be afraid to break up. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that. They're afraid to break up because they're afraid to be alone. Don't be afraid to break up or to change or to re-identify the relationship. If you guys are better off as friends, be friends and nothing more. If you guys were pursuing a relationship to try to get to know each other, to see if you guys are right for marriage, and if it's not leading to that point, again, not happy, you guys realize that you guys aren't compatible. Joseph, what's going on, bro?
What's up, my gentleman? I know I'm catching you on your last. You got like literally 7 minutes left on your show.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share something on your topic of what you were saying, and I love this topic because it appeals to so many men out there that are struggling to find true love. Just to let you know, I started a prayer in 1998, and I didn't get that prayer answered until June 2008. Wow. I prayed for a wife for 10 years. Now, if you know anything about me, you know anything about my story, I ain't going to go into all of that. If you go to the front page of Get Vocal, there's a link scrolling, and you can actually dive into that more.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to send. I'm going to see if I'm going to send everybody that's watching on Facebook and YouTube that link so you guys can watch his story. It's an amazing story.
I appreciate that, but honestly, it was literally I was at a point in my life where I was always told I was damaged goods, I was this, I was that, and kind of living under that cloud of doubt. And I just, as we say in the biblical world, put my fleece out there just to kind of see what's going to happen and what's going to come back. And I was like, all right, if you're out there, I'm going to stay true to this one thing in my life. I'm not going to alter. I'm not going to falter. I'm not going to waver away from this one thing. I'm going to actually say, all right, if it's meant for me to have a wife, I want to keep praying. And then one day, whatever you do it and you do it well. And lo and behold, 10 years later, almost to the month, here came my wife. And not only was she the perfect one for me, but she was a registered nurse. Again, if you know my story, you know that having your own private nurse in your house is really awesome. So, but what I'm saying,
and he's meaning that in the most respectful way, guys. Don't
I am.
Everybody would,
but I to wrap it up, so you can wrap it up, because I'm not going to spend too much time here. But I just want to say, if you got to be genuine about it, and patience. I think Keith said it as well as Dre. Patience is the biggest thing. And if you want to use my story, my life as an example, you can, because honestly, I prayed for a decade for that someone. And I was faithful in that one area of my life where I prayed consistently almost every night for a wife. And I was like, you know what? There's got to be somebody out there to love me for me. And not only did he answer that, I got it with the cherry on top. So, it's being patient in that. And yes, I was damaged goods. I had that in the back of my mind. I had my own scars, my own chains to break free from, but I had to do that prior to everything. So it's been a work in progress, but in the past 5 years, it's just been amazing for my life. But I'm going to just wrap it up and give it back to Dre.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your input, bro.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it. And again, I'm going to put the link up for everybody on Facebook that's watching and YouTube to click that link and watch his story. Amazing story, Joseph.
Thank you, man. I'm going to bounce out.
So, all right, bro. Yeah. So we're going to get ready to wrap up. There's a couple of more shows coming on after this on Get Vocal. I don't want to overlap and take viewers from anybody else, but I do want to thank you so much, Keith, for joining the conversation. Hopefully you can join in again, especially on the show about blended families, because actually I could even glean from that as well. If you are watching on Facebook, thank you so much for watching. Get Vocal, thank you so much for watching. And those that are watching on YouTube, I appreciate you guys so much. You guys have been writing. We're now 7 episodes in. We've been doing this every week now. And thank you guys so much for your faithfulness, your commitment to this. Please share, like it, and make sure that you can just send it out for other people to watch, especially if they are looking for someone and they haven't had much success in finding the right one. This may be the right show for them to listen to or to watch. And I really appreciate you, Keith. I really do. And I hope we have more opportunities for us to just connect outside of this, because I remember when I first met you. I don't know, there's something about you that was just glowing. I just felt connected to you when I first met you. Yeah. And so hopefully we'll have more.
Andre. I'm very proud of you with the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. We're going to close out the show now. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. If you're listening on the podcast or you're watching live, I really appreciate you guys. Everybody have a good night. God bless, and I will see you guys next Thursday at 8 p.m. Good night, guys.